Today I'm not out in the shop, nor am I down in the situation room. I'm in the bedroom, where I'd like to show you my latest project, my loft or guest bunk bed design and build. I don't normally do a lot of woodworking projects for this channel, and I've often found that woodworking and automotive work in the shop don't mix. But I do enjoy a project now and then, as I've enjoyed designing and building this one. Hopefully you enjoy this video and it inspires you to do a woodworking project of your own. At Stiles Automotive, I do general automotive work, modifications, and tips. Hopefully you find this video helpful and watch some of my other videos. Yeah, I'm attempting to give you a look at what the bed looks like here. I've made it look similar to a house and have a play area underneath so that you can pretend like you're in a house, and then of course an upstairs where the bunk bed is at. The headboard and footboard resemble rafters, and then it also has a ridge pole. And I'd intended and purchased a canvas tarp to go over to make it similar to a house or a tent. My daughter has other ideas, I believe, so I haven't put the tarp on it yet. I used dimensional lumber, mainly 2x6s and just a few 2x4s, so it's made extremely sturdy. You've had a good look at the footboard. The headboard is very similar. The rest of the bed is made up of these side rails, which comprise of a 2x6 and a 2x4 bonded together to form a beam, which makes it very stiff. And since I'm using it as a loft, I could have not installed the bottom side rails to give easier access underneath, but I decided I'd go ahead and install them since I made them. Here's a look at the slats that are made out of 1x4 cedar that's just clear coated, no other stain or anything on them. They aren't attached in any way, they're just sitting there on the side rails, and they do provide a little bit of spring to the mattress. The top bunk also has a guardrail on each side, and here you can see that I designed a wide ladder, allow access to adults to get up into the bunk. The top step is a 2x4 that's 3.5 inches wide. The second step is a 2x6 that's been cut down to 4.5 inches, and then the bottom step is a 2x6, it's 5.5 inches. I find it helpful because the rails of the ladder are straight up and down. The steps sit in a dado in the rail and they're glued, and then I use deck screws to tie everything together on the ladder. Since I use dimensional lumber, it does look a little bit like construction and a little crude. So I just went ahead and left the zinc-plated lag bolt heads showing, and of course made some plates, which I'll talk about later in detail. You can see here that the bottom step matches the side rail, so it's 11 inches from the ground. The top step is down 2 inches from the upper side rail to give your foot room to get underneath, since it is only 3.5 inches wide, so you're not stubbing your toe. The top step, you can either step onto the side rail or just go ahead and step all the way up into the mattress. Or, a little kid can just bend over and put their knee up onto the mattress from the top step. Dimensionally, it works out pretty well, I think. Let's transition to looking at the detailed design. Here's a couple of photos where I pre-assembled the bed out in the shop. Yeah, my bed was designed after a bed that I found on Amazon. Now these beds are made in China. They're about $250, and then which isn't so bad. That's not too bad for what you're getting. But then you take into account the $150 to $300 for shipping for this bed, and it becomes quite expensive for what you're getting. So look at, if you can tell, the detail of the connections. So I'm sure this is particle board or some cheap board with inserts and small screws. And I really feel like $500 is a lot for what you're getting in this particular bed, especially when my daughter's going to jump on it and all these connections are going to be loose in a short period of time. So here's a dimensional drawing that's also from the Amazon page. Gives you a little idea of the overall dimensions. And so for my bed, 79 inches inside to inside. And I'll show you the detail drawings. I'll show you my design in detail with detail drawings. And then it's got a step that's they laid out at the head of the bed, and shelves, which I didn't do the shelves. I wanted the loft style though, short bed, so that you could play underneath. But I also thought, well, if I'm going to go ahead and do that, I might as well add the side rails for the bottom, and then I can add another bed underneath. But I call my bed a guest bunk or loft bed because it isn't very tall on the bottom, and it wouldn't be convenient for a child to sleep down there all the time. So I call it a guest bunk. So this is the start of the basic design. So it's made for a twin mattress, and that's what most bunk beds are made for kids. And the twin mattress is 38 or 39 wide, 75 inches long, and approximately 8 inches thick. And I say 8 inches, it's hard to find an 8-inch thick mattress nowadays. Most are thicker. I'm sure you could probably get some memory foam that might be a little bit thinner than that, and that's what I would use on the guest bunk underneath if I were going to put another bunk underneath. So I still have to make the slats for underneath there and buy a mattress if I want to put another mattress underneath there. So I'll come back to this drawing a little later. It shows some more detail about the ladder, but that's enough for now. So the overall dimensions for the bed, here's either the head or the foot board for the bed, and it's made to look like a house, so it's got a rafter on it. It's got a ridge board that goes across and the two rafters here, and then the uprights and cross members here. So I've spaced the cross members up so it's consistent. So it's dimensional lumber, 2x6s, which are nominally 5.5 inches wide, 1.5 inches thick, and it's pine or fir or whatever. And so then I'm using that for my cross members, my uprights, and for most of the stuff that I'm doing, except for the ladder, which is 2x4s, and then of course the ridge, which is a 2x4. And it's designed then so that you can put a tarp or something over the top. I'm planning on doing something like that later. But this is all put together then. This is the head is put together with glue and dowels. And so I use 3 dowels on each location. And then I also have a cut drawing that shows you the dimensions and the angles of my cuts here. But this is the basic overall dimensions. So to the bottom, from the floor to the bottom of the bunk, my daughter has 33 inches underneath to play with. And so the overall height, 81.5 inches from the floor to the top of the bunk. And really, if you wanted to design this without the house style, you could certainly cut it off here. And if you have little kids, my daughter isn't very little anymore. I'm not worried about her falling out of bed. I can show you what I would do if she was a toddler still staying in the bed. I'd probably add some more guides on the side guides to the bed. So for the future, note on the bottom, for the future I would make this dimension a little bit wider, so for a twin size bed it fits tight. So I'd go probably an inch wider to go to 32 here instead of 31 because it is tight. I have a lot of space on the ends. I have about 4 inches or 2 inches on each end of the bed in my 79-inch dimension, but on the sides it's a little tight. And that's certainly dependent on whatever mattress you select. And then also for the future and to modify the design, this 4.5 inch dimension here. So I'm trying to do kind of that craft style where you go from larger to smaller. So I have a 5.5 inch gap here, 5.5 inch gap here, and then I use a 4.5 inch gap up here. And so my note too is if you have small kids, you could make that gap a little bit bigger, go 5.5, and then your guardrail would also be a little bit higher so the child doesn't fall out of the bed as easy. You could also, if you're going to have a thicker mattress, I would adjust that up also. And you have room on the ends to do that. This isn't drawn to scale, but you have room on the ends to do that. So I also have a note, round all edges, and do that when the bed is pre-assembled. And the reason for that is you want to keep certain areas like here straight. You don't want to, for sure you want to make this so this is straight here at these joints, and you want these rounded in here. But also you want to do that work when you have the side rails on so that you're not rounding the edge right here. And I'll show you that on the bed. Let me show you that detail. Here's what I'm talking about right here. At these joints, these have a 1/4 inch round over bit used on them, and then this is flat along here, and that's on all these joints. So this is flat, this has been rounded. You run the router along here, the handheld router along here, and then on these, once I've taken them off, I've run them out. Otherwise you have kind of a rounded spot here. The bit doesn't fit all the way down into this hole, but then I didn't touch these, so that leaves a flat right there, a flat joint right there. So of note, I also rounded everything on the ladder and then the ends of the boards, like this guardrail here. I rounded the ends of that. And then of course the feet down below, I rounded those on the bottom so that when you're moving it around on carpet, you don't splinter out the bottom. And of course the bottom of the ladders too, rounded that, and then rounded the ladder while it was assembled. You can see, so the joints are made so they're tight. Okay, so back to my notes here, talking about rounding. And then screw holes are countersunk and the holes are filled with dowel. So anywhere where I've, up here, those are doweled, and then there's a screw there that has to be drilled down through here. So that's screwed in from the top and glued, and then there's a dowel there. Same way up here, it's a dowel, and then there at this connection, a dowel. These are all dowels, and I used 3/8 dowels on this, and I used 3 at each location. That made it difficult to put this together. It was extremely tight. If you were to do 2 dowels and do maybe a little larger 7/16 dowels or something, that would also be acceptable, I believe. But dowels are a good way to make a good strong joint. Didn't require any screws here then. Let me show you some details. Just a quick drawing to show this detail A of the hole layout, to show you how I laid those holes out. So the upright and the cross members. So the upright and the cross member is a partially done detail drawing. And of course this is where the side rail assembly will sit behind this upright, with the 2x4 and 2x6 will sit behind here. So we're looking at the opposite side of the bed with this is either the footboard or the headboard. I'll lay this out and time lapse it for you. This is actually how I'd lay it out on the assembled headboard, just like this. And instead of a straight edge like this, I'd be using my square. So again, the holes are down 1 inch from the layout lines, up 1 inch from the layout lines, 3/4 of an inch from the edge. So that puts it centered on the 2x6 and down 1 inch from the edge of the 2x6. And then in the 2x4, you want to get 3/4 of an inch into the inside of the 2x4 and then centered on the 2x4. So 3/4 of an inch up from the layout line. 3 holes, 3/8 inch diameter. And then to match drill this to the side rails, simply put the side rails up here, clamp them in place, and drill the holes. Or what I did was drill the top hole in the side rail, or this hole, which is down 1 inch and centered 3/4 of an inch. Drill that hole, and then position the side rail to the headboard and the footboard, and then you're able to drill this hole through this, using this hole and that hole as a guide, drill these 2 holes. So put a punch in through this hole into that hole that you pre-drill, and that one needs, for the lag bolts, it needs to be a little less than the 3/8, like 5/16 into that hole, and then the lag bolt will top itself as you're putting it in. And then instead of just washers, I started out using a fender washer on underneath all the lag bolts, and that didn't appear like it was going to have the holding power that I wanted, and it was going to make an indent into my soft wood. So I decided to go with these plates, and you saw those on the end, the black plates, and you can paint them any color you want. And I just left the lag bolts as zinc, but and I also used a zinc washer here, and that was to help so I don't mess up the paint on this. And really, I sandblasted these. These are just steel. It's flat bar from Home Depot, and sandblasted it. Give it a coat of engine paint, or 2 or 3 coats actually, and then let it sit overnight. And after it's sat a while, then oven heat it to 200 degrees Fahrenheit for about an hour. That gives a good finish, and good smooth finish, and it bonds it well to the steel. So this end plate that goes on all the side rails, and a few other places, but there's 12 of those, and then 12 of the little plates, and then 2 of the plates that go up on the top. Before I go into any more detailed drawings, I should probably show you the cut sheet. And you can pause the video here at any point and probably do a screen capture of this and be able to get these plans. Certainly welcome to have the plans for free. I don't have a website or anything to exchange the plans with you. So again, the guest bunk loft bed cut sheet, and here's the cross members at 31, and then the uprights. So you need 4 of those, and you need 4 of these for each end, so you need 8 of these. And then the side rails, and this was going to be the steps. I was going to design it so the steps were narrower, but I decided that I didn't like that. I wanted a wider step so I could easily get up myself, and so it's a 2-foot wide step now, and I'll show you the detail on that in a few minutes. But I don't show you the actual steps, but in the cut sheet here. So here's the ridge, 79. I was going to go 76 originally, but 79 inches. And then here's the rafters, and the angles 45 and 20 1/4. And I use a crosscut saw on that, chop saw. And so ladder, 2 pieces of the ladder gets cut off at a 45, and then that matches the ridge, and it looks quite nice. Leave 1 inch on the top, and 57 inches tall. Looking at another 2x6 and taking the 31-inch pieces for the cross members out of that, number 2 of the cross members. And I've tried to label these and give them each a number so it's not as confusing for you. And then the side rail rest. There's one of these that goes with each side rail, right? That's what the slat sits on. And then the short guardrail that's right here that you can see in the video. It's right here. It's attached to the ladder, 55 inches long. And then the guardrail that goes on the other side, of course, is the length of the bed, 79 inches. And then the slats are 38.5 inches. And they're just 1x4, and they can either be pine, but really the red cedar was a little bit nicer wood and looks a little nicer. You don't have to stain it. You just put a finish on it, protective coating on it. Looks quite nice. I showed you that under the bed earlier. So that's my cut sheet. Side rails make a strong beam. So it's a 2x6 that's 79 inches long and a 2x4 that's 79 inches long. I showed you that on the cut sheet. And as an assembly, you dowel and screw them. So every 6 inches, you're alternating between a screw and a dowel. And you can see that here on the bed. So these are where the screw holes are. I've plugged them and sanded, so that's where the dowel covers that screw head. And in between those, every 6 inches, so in between those, which you can't see, is a dowel. And so I'm trying to make this into one continuous beam by bonding those two pieces of wood together. And it's quite strong that way. There's no movement in it whatsoever when a 60-pound child jumps up and down on the mattress. So not to scale. And then also this gets rounded, and these ends do not get rounded, which I showed you before. And I'm recommending that you match drill with 3/8 holes to the ladder. And you do that here on the ladder side on the upper one, and then the same down below. So there's a lag bolt here, there, and down below. And you can do that after you have the ladder assembled. Just clamp it to the bed and then drill the holes into them. So 6 4-inch deck screws, and they're countersunk with dowel finish. 6 3/8 dowels that are 3.5 inches long. Round all edges, but pre-assemble the bed before you do it. Glue dowel, clamp, and screw in one assembly process, so prior to the screw drying, so it becomes one continuous beam. Match drill the lag bolt holes in the ends, and mark. So once you do that, once you match drill it, you have to mark it so that this becomes matched to the footboard or the headboard. So I'm recommending that you make sure you mark this with foot top, top head, bottom foot, or bottom head. And then of course you can tell near side and far side based on the holes and for the ladder, so you won't get it mixed up. So the bed has to go back together in the same way it came apart. You wouldn't have to do that. You could put more slop into your holes on the headboard or the footboard, but that's what I recommend. So you got nice tight joints, nice tight bolt holes. So the last thing to talk about then is the ladder, and it's 25 inches wide from the outside to the outside, 22 inches from the inside to inside, or the steps are 23 inches long, and I'm recessing those into a slot, and that's 1/2 inch deep on each side. And what that does is it helps keep the boards flat over the life of the bed, and it gives a little bit more of a glue joint. And then I put screws in the end, and I showed you that earlier when I gave you the overall of the bed. And so I start out by going 11 inches to the top of the step, and again that's so that the bottom step then meets that side rail, so it kind of gives you a smooth, longer step. And then 10 inches and 10 inches again, so that gives you this gap at the top. If you went 11 inches, it would meet up here, and then your foot wouldn't be able to go underneath. And for me, with a bigger foot, it's nice to be able to let it go underneath. So again, what I did was the 2x6, 5.5, and then I cut a 2x6 down to 4.5. So 5.5, 4.5, 3.5 with a regular 2x4. Kind of gives you a step down ladder. And then of course the 45-degree angle to match the bed at the top, and leaving about an inch there flat. So also playing around with tarp ideas, 7-foot wide by 6-foot long tarp, or different ideas to do a tarp. And my daughter hasn't been really excited about putting a tarp over the top. At first she was, but then she's planning on doing something else, I think, with like a mosquito net or something. So then you can see how the bolt holes that go into the back of the ladder, and then those lag bolts just thread into the ladder, and the ladder holds this guardrail at the top, and then the top side rail holds the ladder, makes it quite strong when it's tied together with the side rail. The last thing to talk about is the finish. It is a pine, or this dimensional lumber, right, is a soft wood, so pre-stain conditioner from Minwax, and then an early American stain. And what I was trying to do is a tribute to my dad, who did pine furniture for many years. He used this finish, but he also used, I didn't quite get it right because he used a different stain too. He did a two-part where he stained it again in addition to the early American. And then of course I protected it with a fast drying polyurethane. Here's a look at my bill of materials for my loft bed. I used 13 2x6s. They were regular 2x6 studs. I had 9 already, so I used the old purchase price there, and then I added 4 more under a new purchase price. 5 2x4s. Now I had some waste, so I really didn't need to use 10-foot 2x4s. You could have got by with a 2x4 stud on those. 10 dowels, 3/8 dowels, and then 1 7/16 dowel. And that's because I ran out of 3/8 dowels and had to purchase more, that I used the 7/16. So really I could have used 11 3/8 dowels. You really don't need to use the 7/16, or you could go all to 7/16 dowels and go that way instead of the 3/8. 4 1x4s that were red cedar, lag bolts, flat washers. Then I didn't use the fender washers. Flat bar, deck screws, both 4-inch and 2.5-inch. I had to use some wood glue, so I'm trying to include everything here for you, even though I had some existing wood glue. Purchased some new wood glue, and then the finishes, Danish oil for the red cedar, and then gloss black engine paint. And then I haven't done anything with the tarp yet. So really overall for the bunk bed, I'm at $375.52. And then if you add the bedding, mattress and the bedding, which I purchased new bedding for my daughter, and so I included that here, that came out to just under $400. And of course, I included the additional sandpaper that I needed. I had an existing belt sander, but I needed some new sanding belts. So I purchased both 120 and 80 grit sanding belts. And these are all from Home Depot. And then my orbital sander, or so I bought a new random orbital sander, and then the sanding discs for those down on the bottom. That came out to $180. And so my overall total is just under $1,000 for the bed. Now that concludes the video. If you found it helpful, let me know in the comments, and please subscribe. I know this is different than what I usually do at Stiles Automotive. I normally do general automotive work, modifications and tips to cars and motorcycles and anything mechanical. And this is delving into a little bit of woodworking. But I wanted to show you this project and share the design with you because it's my own unique design, even though I patterned it after something that I saw online. So please subscribe. I look forward to your comments.